The morning was quiet, the kind of quiet that only exists in places where time seems to slow down. The sky was still gray and a light mist floated above the rows of headstones. The cemetery was not big, but it was old, filled with names and dates that had long been forgotten by most people. Every day, at almost the same hour, an old man named Noah arrived before the sun came up. He had worked as a gravedigger for more than 20 years. People in town knew him well, though few really knew his story. To most, he was just the quiet man who kept the cemetery clean and peaceful. Noah didn't mind being alone. He had spent most of his life in silence, digging, trimming, and mending graves. There was something calm about his work. It was sad sometimes, yes, but it also reminded him of how precious every day of life really was. He never rushed. He believed every grave deserved care. Every name on a headstone deserved to be remembered, even if only by him. Sometimes, when he finished his work early, he would sit under the big oak tree near the center of the cemetery and drink his tea. He would watch the birds land on the stone crosses and think about the families who once came there crying, but no longer visited. That morning, as he unlocked the iron gate and stepped inside, he noticed something strange. Near the far corner, close to where the new graves had been dug, he saw a small bunch of flowers lying neatly in front of a headstone. They were fresh, not the kind that had been there for days. He frowned a little. He had cleaned that area just yesterday, and there hadn't been anything there then. He walked over slowly, his boots crunching on the damp gravel. The flowers were small wild daisies tied together with a thin red ribbon. Next to them was a shiny pebble, carefully placed in the center of the stone. Noah knelt down and brushed away a few fallen leaves. The name on the stone read Lena Moore. He remembered digging that grave a few months ago. A young woman gone too soon. He didn't know much about her, only that her funeral had been quiet. Just an older woman and a few neighbors standing in the rain. He wondered who had left the flowers. He knew most families who came to visit their loved ones. He liked seeing them. It reminded him that his work mattered. But for this grave, he hadn't seen anyone since the funeral. He picked up the pebble and turned it over in his hand. There was nothing written on it, just smooth and shiny like someone had washed it carefully. He placed it back where it was and stood up, glancing around. The mist was lifting and a few birds began to sing from the trees. Noah shook his head and went back to his work. Maybe a friend or a neighbor had stopped by early. Still, something about it felt different, almost too careful, too thoughtful. As the day went on, he forgot about it and focused on trimming the grass near the entrance. But when he came back the next morning, there were more things beside the same grave. A tiny paper crane, folded neatly, and a piece of candy wrapped in blue foil. Noah stopped in his tracks. Now he was sure someone was coming here often, maybe every morning before he arrived. But who would bring a candy to a grave? It wasn't something adults usually did. He looked around again but saw no one. The gate was still locked from the outside when he arrived, so whoever came must have entered from the small back fence that was partly broken. He made a note to fix it later, but for some reason he didn't rush to do it that day. Deep inside, he was curious. Over the next few days, he started noticing a pattern. Every morning, something new appeared. A small flower, a button, a feather, or a pebble shaped like a heart. Each item looked like it had been placed there by small hands. Noah started coming earlier, hoping to see who it was. But each time, the gifts were already there when he arrived. One morning, the air was colder than usual. The sky was heavy with clouds, and a light fog covered the ground. Noah wrapped his coat tighter around him as he made his way through the graves. He paused near Lena's grave again. This time he found something different, a drawing, made with crayons on a torn piece of notebook paper. It showed a stick figure woman with long hair, holding hands with a small child. Both were smiling, and above them was a big sun with rays spreading out like fingers. At the bottom of the page, written in uneven letters, were the words, "Me and Mama." Noah stared at the drawing for a long moment. He didn't know why, but he felt a lump in his throat. He carefully folded the paper and placed it back where it had been. He looked around again, half expecting someone to appear. The fog was so thick that he could barely see 10 steps ahead. Then just as he turned to leave, he heard something. A soft humming sound, faint but clear. He froze. The sound came from somewhere deeper in the cemetery near the older graves. It was a tune, slow and gentle, the kind a child might hum while playing. Noah followed the sound, his boots sinking slightly in the damp soil. As he moved closer, the humming stopped. Then he heard something else. A small voice whispering. He turned the corner near the old oak tree and saw a small figure crouched beside a grave. It was a little boy, maybe 6 or 7 years old. He was sitting on the ground, drawing circles in the dirt with a stick. For a moment, Noah didn't know what to do. The boy seemed completely unaware of him, talking softly to the ground as if speaking to someone. Noah cleared his throat gently. "Hey there," he said in a kind voice. "Are you okay, little one?" The boy jumped slightly and turned his head. His face was pale but sweet, with wide brown eyes and messy hair that looked like he had run all the way there. "I'm fine," the boy said quietly, clutching the stick in his hand. Noah walked closer, careful not to scare him. "What are you doing here all alone?" "It's early morning." "Do your parents know you're here?" The boy shook his head. "I just came to play," he whispered. "Play?" Noah repeated softly. "Here?" The boy nodded, looking down again. "I come here every day. She likes it when I come." Noah frowned slightly. "Who likes it?" The boy pointed toward the grave beside him. The headstone was small and old, the letters almost faded. It wasn't the same one with the flowers and toys, but just a few steps away from it. "She does," the boy said. "My mom." Noah's breath caught for a moment. He looked at the stone carefully. It was indeed the same last name, Moore. He felt something shift inside him. Sadness mixed with confusion. So this was the child leaving those things? He knelt beside the boy, trying to keep his tone gentle. "You knew Lena Moore?" The boy nodded without looking up. "She's my mom. She's sleeping here now." Noah's heart ached at those words. He didn't know what to say. The boy's voice was calm, but there was something heavy in it, a kind of quiet pain that no child should carry. "I see," Noah said softly. "You must miss her a lot." The boy shrugged a little. "I do, but I talk to her, so it's okay. She hears me. I bring her things I like so she doesn't get lonely." Noah swallowed hard. He didn't know how to respond. He had seen many families come and go from this cemetery, but he had never seen something like this. A little boy sneaking in every day to talk to his mother as if she were still there. He looked around again, wondering where the boy's family was. "Does your dad or grandma know you come here?" The boy shook his head. "Grandma doesn't like me talking about Mom. She cries. So I come here alone. I climb through the hole in the back fence. It's not far from my house." Noah nodded slowly. He didn't want to frighten him, but he also worried. "That's not safe, son. It's cold here in the morning." The boy smiled a little, looking up at the sky. "Mom says I'm brave. She likes it when I sing her songs." Noah's chest felt tight. He didn't know whether to smile or cry. He placed a hand gently on the boy's shoulder. "You're a good boy," he said softly. "You really love your mom." The boy nodded and whispered, "I do." Then he turned back to the grave and began humming again. The same tune as before, quiet and sweet. Noah stood there silently, listening. Something about the sound filled the air with warmth. It didn't feel sad anymore. It felt peaceful. As the boy hummed, Noah noticed a small toy car lying near the headstone, its wheels half buried in the dirt. The boy picked it up and placed it on top of the stone. "Now she has one too," he whispered. Noah felt a shiver run down his spine. He didn't know why, but something about that moment touched him deeply. It was as if he had walked into a world that most people never get to see. A world where love doesn't end. Even when life does. He stayed there until the boy stood up, brushed the dirt from his knees, and said softly, "I have to go now. Grandma will wake up soon." Before Noah could say another word, the boy turned and ran toward the back fence. By the time Noah reached the spot, the boy was gone, lost in the morning fog. Noah stood there for a long while, staring at the empty space where the boy had been. The mist swirled around him, and the only sound left was the whisper of the wind through the trees. He looked back at the grave, the toy car still shining faintly in the pale light. And for the first time in years, Noah felt something stir inside him. Not fear, not sadness, but wonder. He didn't know it yet. But what he had seen that morning was only the beginning of something far greater, something that would change his understanding of life and death forever. Noah didn't sleep well that night. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the little boy's face, his small hands brushing the dirt off the headstone, his calm voice whispering to someone who couldn't answer back. The picture stayed in his mind like a shadow that refused to fade. He had seen thousands of graves in his life. Some were visited by families for years. Others were forgotten just weeks after the funeral. But never had he seen a child come alone every morning, leaving small gifts as if his mother was still there waiting. When dawn came, Noah decided he would go early again. He wanted to make sure the boy was safe. The thought of a little child wandering into the cemetery alone made him uneasy. It wasn't just the cold or the risk of falling, it was the silence, the loneliness. As he unlocked the gate, the sky was still dark blue. The air smelled of wet grass and rain. He walked straight toward the grave where the boy had been the day before. The ground was damp, the toy car still resting neatly on top of the headstone. He looked around, hoping to spot the small figure again. But there was no one. The fog was heavier than usual, curling between the trees like smoke. He waited, hands in his pockets, listening. Then he heard it, faint humming, the same tune as yesterday. It came from behind the big oak tree. Noah's heart beat faster. He followed the sound quietly until he saw him again. The boy was sitting cross-legged on the ground, holding a bunch of small white flowers. His hair was damp with dew, and his clothes looked slightly wrinkled as if he had dressed himself in a hurry. He was talking softly to the grave again. Noah stayed back for a moment, not wanting to startle him. He could hear parts of what the boy was saying. "I brought you new flowers, Mom. I picked them near the road. I think you'll like these better. They smell nice." The boy placed the flowers gently on the stone, then reached into his pocket and pulled out something small, a folded paper heart. He placed it beside the flowers and smiled proudly. "I made it myself. You said I was good at folding paper, remember?" Noah felt a deep ache in his chest. There was so much innocence in those few words, and so much love. He stepped closer and said softly, "Good morning, little one." The boy turned quickly, eyes wide at first, then relaxed when he saw it was the same man from yesterday. "Oh, hi," he said. "You're here early again," Noah said with a gentle smile. "Your mom must be happy to see you." The boy nodded. "I don't want her to be lonely. Grandma says people forget after some time, but I won't forget." Noah's throat tightened. He crouched down beside him. "You're a kind boy. Your mom must have been very proud of you." The boy smiled faintly but didn't say anything for a moment. Then he asked, "Do you work here?" "Yes," Noah replied. "I take care of the graves. Make sure everything stays clean and peaceful." "That's good," the boy said. "Then you can look after her when I'm not here." Noah nodded softly. "I promise I will." The boy's face brightened a little. "Thank you." For a while they both sat there quietly. The wind rustled through the trees, and the sound of distant birds filled the air. The boy started humming again, and Noah listened. It was the same soft tune, gentle and sad. After a while, Noah asked, "Does your grandmother know you come here every morning?" The boy shook his head. "No, she would be mad. She says I shouldn't come because it makes me sad. But it doesn't make me sad. It makes me feel close to Mom." Noah nodded. "I understand. Sometimes people think they're protecting us, but they don't realize we just want to remember." The boy looked at him curiously. "Did you lose someone too?" Noah hesitated. He rarely spoke about his past. But something about the boy's quiet honesty made him open up. "A long time ago," he said slowly. "My wife, she got sick. I used to visit her grave every day too, just like you do." The boy looked down, tracing a small heart in the dirt with his finger. "Did it help?" "Yes," Noah said. "Talking to her helped me feel like she was still listening. And somehow I think she was." The boy smiled softly. "Then my mom listens too." "I'm sure she does," Noah replied gently. The boy stood up and brushed off his knees. He looked at the grave one last time, then said, "I have to go now. Grandma will wake up soon." "Let me walk you out," Noah offered, but the boy shook his head quickly. "No, it's okay. I go through the fence. It's faster. She'll get mad if she sees me come from the main gate." Before Noah could answer, the boy was already walking away toward the back of the cemetery. The fog seemed to swallow him as he disappeared behind the trees. Noah stood there staring at the spot for a long time. Something about the whole thing didn't feel right. The boy was too young to be wandering alone every day. He wanted to know more, where he lived, who his grandmother was, and why no one knew he was coming here. Later that day, when he finished his work, Noah decided to walk to the small neighborhood that bordered the cemetery. Maybe someone would recognize the description of the boy. He stopped at a small grocery shop near the corner. The shopkeeper, a kind old man, looked up from behind the counter. "Morning, Noah. Need something?" "Just a question," Noah said. "Do you know a boy, maybe 6 or 7 years old, dark hair, brown eyes? I think he lives nearby. His last name might be Moore." The shopkeeper's smile faded a little. "Moore, you mean the woman who died a few months ago? Terrible thing. Her car went off the road during the rainstorm. She lived with her mother, poor lady, but I thought the boy died too." Noah froze. "The boy?" The man nodded slowly. "Yes, she had a son. They said he was in the car with her when it happened. Neither of them made it." Noah felt a chill crawl up his neck. "Are you sure?" The man sighed. "That's what I heard." The funeral was quiet. Only the old woman was there. She's still around, lives in that small house near the bridge. Noah thanked him and left, his mind spinning. The shopkeeper must have been mistaken. The boy was real. He had talked to him, seen him, even touched his shoulder. He couldn't have imagined it. Still, the words echoed in his mind all the way back to the cemetery. Neither of them made it. The next morning, Noah returned earlier than usual. The air was cold and heavy, and the fog hung low over the ground. He walked straight to the same grave, half afraid of what he might, or might not, see. The flowers the boy had left yesterday were still there, slightly wilted. The paper heart was damp from the dew, its edges curling, but there was something new too. A small drawing placed carefully on top of the stone. It was the same drawing style as before, crayons on notebook paper. This one showed a man standing beside the little boy, both smiling at the woman in the middle. The man had gray hair just like Noah's. Noah's hands trembled slightly as he picked it up. There was a small note written in crooked letters at the bottom. "My friend helps you now. He's nice." Noah looked around quickly, his eyes scanning the trees, the fog, the graves, but there was no one. Only silence. He stayed there for nearly an hour, waiting, listening, hoping the boy would appear. But he didn't. When he finally walked back to the gate, he noticed something else. The small hole in the back fence, the one the boy said he used to climb through, was covered with thick vines and rust. It looked like it hadn't been touched in years. Noah stood there frozen, staring at it. The metal links were solid, the ground beneath untouched. There were no footprints, no sign anyone had been there recently. A cold breeze brushed past him, and for a moment, he thought he heard that faint humming again, the same soft tune that had drifted through the fog before. He turned around quickly, but the cemetery was empty. The toy car still sat on the grave, catching a glimmer of pale sunlight through the mist. Noah stood there a long time, his thoughts heavy. He didn't want to believe what his heart was whispering. The boy seemed so alive, and his voice, his smile, his warmth. But if what the shopkeeper said was true, then who had he been talking to? That night, when Noah closed the gate and walked home, he looked back once more at the quiet cemetery. The mist had lifted, and the moonlight shone softly across the rows of stones. For a brief second near the far corner, he thought he saw a small shadow, a boy kneeling beside a grave, his head bowed, humming that same gentle tune. Then the shadow faded into the night. Noah took a deep breath, his heart pounding. Whatever it was, he wasn't afraid. Instead, he felt something else, a strange peace, as if love itself had refused to disappear even after everything else was gone. He didn't yet know what he had become part of. But he knew one thing for sure. The little boy had come for a reason, and Noah was meant to find out why. Noah barely slept that night. The moment he closed his eyes, he could see the boy's face, those quiet eyes, the soft humming, and that drawing that shouldn't have been there. He had touched it with his own hands, felt the damp paper between his fingers, and yet nothing made sense anymore. By morning, he looked tired but determined. He had spent years surrounded by silence and loss, but never had he felt something like this, something that pulled at his heart and confused his mind all at once. He needed answers. When he reached the cemetery, the mist was heavier than usual. The trees swayed gently in the cold breeze, their branches whispering against each other. The ground was covered in thin frost, and his breath came out in small white clouds. Noah made his way toward Lena Moore's grave, his boots crunching softly on the frozen ground. As he got closer, he felt that strange stillness again, like the world itself was waiting. The grave looked just as it had yesterday. The flowers, the paper heart, and the drawing and all were there untouched. The toy car still sat proudly at the top, a tiny splash of color against the pale gray stone. He knelt beside it, brushing away a few leaves. "Little one," he whispered, "if you can hear me, I just want to understand." The words slipped out before he realized he was speaking. He wasn't sure who he was talking to anymore, the boy, the mother, or perhaps something beyond both. For a while there was only silence. Then faintly he heard the sound of laughter. It was soft, distant, and unmistakably a child's. Noah looked up quickly, his eyes searching the fog. "Hello?" He called out, no answer. The laughter faded as quickly as it came, leaving only the rustling of leaves behind. He stayed still for a few more seconds, then sighed and stood up. Maybe his mind was playing tricks on him. Maybe he was too tired. But deep down, something told him it wasn't just his imagination. Later that afternoon, he decided to visit the woman the shopkeeper had mentioned, the grandmother. He wanted to know the truth. Her house was small and old, sitting near the bridge at the edge of town. The garden was overgrown and the curtains were always drawn. Noah hesitated at the gate, unsure what he was going to say. After a moment, he knocked gently on the door. An older woman answered. Her face was thin, her eyes tired but kind. She looked at him curiously. "Yes." "Good afternoon, ma'am," Noah said politely. "My name's Noah. I work at the town cemetery." The woman's expression shifted slightly and she gripped the edge of the door. "Oh, I see. Is something wrong?" No, Noah said quickly. "Nothing wrong, I wanted to ask you something. It's about your daughter, Lena." Her eyes softened at the name, but a deep sadness filled them. "You were there? At the burial?" "Yes," he replied quietly. "I remember it," the woman nodded slowly. "She was my only child." Noah hesitated. He didn't want to upset her, but he needed to know. "And her son?" "Your grandson." The woman's eyes lowered. Her voice trembled slightly as she spoke. "He was with her that night. They were coming home when it happened. The car went off the road and into the river. They said it was quick." Noah felt a chill run down his spine. He could hear her voice, but it was like the world around him had stopped moving. "I'm sorry," he said softly. "I didn't mean to bring up pain." The woman shook her head. "You're kind to ask. Most people stopped asking long ago." Noah hesitated, then asked carefully, "Did you ever go to the cemetery after the funeral?" The woman looked at him for a long moment before answering. "I went once," she said, "but I couldn't stay. It hurt too much. I haven't been back since." Noah nodded slowly. "So, no one else has visited?" She frowned. "Not that I know of." "Why do you ask?" Noah hesitated. He didn't know how to explain what he had seen without sounding strange. "It's just, someone has been leaving things at her grave. Flowers, drawings, little toys. I thought maybe a friend of your grandson." The woman's face turned pale. She shook her head slowly. "No, he didn't have many friends. He was shy, always stayed close to his mother." Then she paused, her eyes narrowing slightly. "What kind of things?" "Small things," Noah said softly. "Like what a child might leave for someone they love." The woman's hand trembled slightly. "That's not possible," she whispered. Noah said nothing. He could see the confusion and fear in her eyes. After a long silence, she finally asked, "Have you seen anyone?" He nodded slowly. "Yes, a little boy. He said he was her son." The woman's hand covered her mouth. "You're sure?" "I spoke to him," Noah said. "Twice. He said he comes every morning before his grandmother wakes up. He even told me about the hole in the back fence." The woman's eyes filled with tears. "The back fence?" she whispered. "When he was alive, he used to play near that fence all the time. He'd squeeze through the hole to chase the rabbits. I told him it wasn't safe." Her voice broke on the last word. Noah's throat tightened. "I'm sorry," he said softly. "I didn't mean to frighten you." The woman shook her head slowly. "You didn't frighten me," she said, her voice trembling. "You gave me something I thought I'd never have again." "What's that?" Noah asked gently. "Hope," she whispered. "Maybe he's not gone completely." Noah didn't know what to say. He felt both comforted and unsettled by her words. When he left her house, the sun was already setting. The orange light painted long shadows on the road as he walked back toward the cemetery. He kept thinking about what she had said. Maybe he's not gone completely. That night he couldn't stop thinking about the boy's smile, the way he had said, "She hears me." Maybe the child was right. Maybe love was strong enough to keep someone close even when they weren't supposed to be here anymore. The next morning, Noah went to the cemetery before sunrise. He felt drawn there as if something was calling him. The mist was thick again, swirling around the graves like soft smoke. As he reached the familiar spot, his heart skipped. There beside the grave stood the boy. He was dressed the same, small jacket, worn shoes, messy hair. He was humming softly, that same little tune that had haunted Noah's mind for days. Noah walked closer, quietly. "You're here again," he said gently. The boy looked up and smiled. "You came back." "Of course," Noah said, crouching down beside him. "I told you I'd look after her." The boy nodded. "She's happy now. I can tell." Noah looked at the grave, then at the boy. "Can I ask you something?" "Okay," the boy said. "Do you live nearby?" The boy tilted his head. "Not really, but I come here every day. It's easy for me." Noah frowned slightly. "How do you come in?" "The gate's locked in the morning." The boy smiled faintly, a strange, knowing smile. "I don't need the gate." Noah's heart gave a small thump. "What do you mean?" The boy didn't answer. Instead, he stood up and looked at the sky. "It's almost time," he said softly. "Time for what?" Noah asked. The boy looked at him and smiled again, with that same gentle, peaceful smile. "Time to say goodbye." Before Noah could ask another question, the boy walked over to the grave, knelt, and placed something small on the stone, a tiny drawing of a heart with wings. He whispered something Noah couldn't hear, then turned to him one last time. "Thank you for taking care of her," he said. Noah opened his mouth to reply, but in that moment a gust of wind swept through the cemetery. The mist thickened, wrapping around them like a veil. Noah blinked, and when he looked again, the boy was gone. Completely gone. Noah called out softly, his voice shaking. "Little one?" "Where are you?" Only silence answered. He ran toward the back fence, but it was the same as before, and overgrown and untouched. No footprints, no sound of running feet, nothing. Noah stood there, his heart pounding, his breath coming in short gasps. Then he turned back toward the grave. The tiny drawing the boy had left fluttered slightly in the wind. He picked it up carefully. There were 2 words written in the middle of the heart. "We're home." For a long time, Noah just stood there staring at it. He didn't know whether to cry or smile, but deep inside he felt something shift, a peace that he hadn't felt in years. He realized then that maybe the boy had never been lost at all. Maybe he had simply come back one last time to make sure his mother wasn't alone, and to thank the man who had helped keep her grave safe. That night, when Noah locked the cemetery gate, he looked up at the stars and whispered softly, "Rest well, little one. She's safe now." And for the first time in many years, he felt that the silence around him wasn't empty anymore. It was filled with something gentle, something kind, the quiet echo of love that refuses to fade, even after life itself has ended. The morning air felt colder than usual, and the wind moved softly through the tall grass of the cemetery. Noah walked slowly between the graves, his old boots brushing against the dew-covered leaves. The memory of the little boy wouldn't leave his mind. Every night since he had met the child, he'd thought about his small hands, the quiet way he spoke, and the sadness in his eyes. Noah had seen grief in many forms over the years, but something about that boy's calm, gentle way of speaking to the grave had stayed with him. That morning, he didn't come to work as just a gravedigger. He came with a purpose. He wanted to see the child again. He wanted to know more, who he was, where he came from, and how he managed to get inside the cemetery without being noticed. When Noah reached the far corner of the graveyard, the one with the big oak tree, he stopped. The grave where the boy had sat was quiet. The flowers the child had left were still there, though some had begun to wilt. The tiny toy was half buried in dirt, as if the wind had tried to hide it. Noah knelt beside it, brushing the soil away with his hand. The toy was old, one of those small cars that children often carry in their pockets. Its paint was faded, but it still had a bit of shine under the morning sun. He felt something tighten in his chest. Whoever that little boy was, he cared deeply about the person buried here. There was love in every gesture, the flowers, the toy, the way he spoke softly as if the grave could hear him. Noah sighed and whispered under his breath, "Little one, where are you?" He stayed there for a while, fixing the flowers and cleaning the edges of the grave, trying to make it look neat. He didn't know why, but it felt right to take care of it. It was as if he was helping the child somehow. Hours passed, and Noah went about his other work, trimming grass, setting new flowers on other graves, sweeping fallen leaves. The sky slowly changed from a dull gray to a pale blue, and a few birds landed on the fence. Then, as he picked up his shovel to finish for the day, he heard it again, the soft humming. He froze. The same tune as before. The same sweet, slow melody. Noah turned around and saw the boy again, sitting by the same grave, drawing something in the dirt with a stick. His small shoes were dusty and his hair was a little messy, but he looked peaceful, almost glowing in the afternoon light. Noah's heart began to race. He didn't want to scare the child, so he walked toward him slowly, his steps light and careful. When he got close enough, he said softly, "You came back." The boy turned and smiled shyly. "I told you I come here a lot." Noah sat down a short distance away, trying to keep his voice gentle. "It's not easy to get inside, little one. Do you come alone?" The boy nodded. "The gate opens for me." That made Noah frown a little. He knew that wasn't possible. He locked that gate himself every evening, and in the morning, it was always the same old lock still in place. But he didn't want to question the child too much. "You must love your mom a lot," he said instead. The boy's eyes softened. "I do. I talk to her every day. She listens to me even when I can't see her." Something in Noah's heart broke a little. There was such innocence in the child's words, yet so much quiet sadness too. The way he spoke, the way he believed his mother could hear him, it reminded Noah of something pure that the world had long forgotten. The boy looked down at his toy car and placed it carefully near the headstone. "Mom liked this one. She used to push it for me when I was little." Noah smiled faintly. "That's very kind of you, bringing her something to remember." The boy turned his head and looked at him curiously. "Do you think she knows I'm here?" Noah nodded slowly. "I believe she does. And I think she's happy that you come." For a moment, they both sat quietly. The wind blew softly and the leaves around them rustled. The sound of birds faded into the distance. Then the boy stood up and brushed the dirt from his knees. "I have to tell her something before I go," he said, looking at the grave again. Noah stayed silent, watching. The boy knelt down and whispered something. Noah couldn't hear every word, but he caught pieces of it. "I'll be okay. Thank you. And I met someone kind." Then it happened. A sudden gust of wind swept across the graveyard, stronger than before. The trees swayed, the grass bent low, and the air filled with the sound of whispering leaves. Noah shivered, but not from the cold. He felt something move through him, something warm, calm, and almost familiar. It was like a soft hand resting on his shoulder just for a second. The boy smiled, looking at the space above the grave, as if he could see someone standing there. "See, Mom? I told you I'd be fine." Noah's eyes widened. He looked around, no one else was there. But the air around them felt alive. It wasn't frightening, not even strange, and it was peaceful. He could feel it deep inside, a quiet presence, gentle and full of love. And then, just as quickly as it came, the wind stopped. The leaves fell still. The boy looked at Noah and smiled softly. "She said thank you." Noah blinked. "What did she say?" "She said thank you for helping me." His voice was so clear, so sure that Noah didn't know how to respond. He wanted to speak, but his throat felt tight. All he could do was nod. The boy waved at the grave and started walking toward the gate. Noah stood up to follow him, but when he looked again, the boy was already far ahead, almost at the gate. "Wait," Noah called out, hurrying after him. "Let me walk you home." But by the time he reached the gate, the child was gone. The gate was closed, the lock still in place. There were no footprints on the dirt road outside, no sign of anyone walking away. Only the soft humming of the wind remained. Noah stood there, frozen. His heart pounded in his chest. He turned back to look at the grave. The toy car still sat there, the flowers still bent in the same shape. Everything looked just as it had been before. He rubbed his eyes, wondering if he had imagined it all. But deep down, he knew he hadn't. He could still feel that warm touch on his shoulder, that quiet sense of peace. As the sun began to set, Noah knelt down beside the grave again. The golden light fell gently across the grass, and for a moment, It looked like everything around him was glowing. He whispered softly, "If you can hear me, thank you for letting me see something beautiful." He stayed there until the evening turned dark and the stars began to show. He didn't feel afraid anymore. Instead, he felt something different, something calm. That night, when he went home, he couldn't stop thinking about the boy's smile. He sat by his window for a long time, looking up at the stars, wondering what he had just witnessed. Maybe there were things in this world that didn't need to be understood, things that existed only to remind people of love, kindness, and hope. From that day on, Noah felt something change inside him. He still worked the same job, still followed the same routine, but his heart was lighter. Every morning he brought a small flower from his garden and placed it on that grave before starting his work. It became part of his day, just like breathing. Sometimes when the wind blew through the trees, he thought he heard the boy's soft humming again. It didn't scare him anymore. Instead, it made him smile. He knew he'd been part of something special, something that went beyond what the eyes could see. And though he never saw the child again, he always believed that somewhere, in a place beyond what humans could understand, that little boy was smiling too. The morning sun rose slowly behind the old cemetery wall, spreading a soft golden light over the rows of graves. Noah was already there, as he had been every morning since that strange, beautiful day when the little boy vanished. He moved quietly, sweeping the narrow paths and trimming the grass near the headstones. The air was cool, and the smell of fresh soil mixed with the scent of flowers people had brought for their loved ones. It had been a week since he last saw the boy. Every morning, Noah found himself looking toward the far corner of the graveyard, near the big oak tree. He didn't know why he expected to see him again. Maybe it was hope, or maybe it was the feeling that something still lingered there, something gentle waiting. He never told anyone what had happened that day. Not his coworkers, not the priest who sometimes came by, not even his sister, who often worried about him spending too much time alone. Noah carried that memory quietly in his heart. It felt too personal, too sacred to explain. How could he make anyone believe it? How could he describe that warm wind, that voice, that strange peace that had filled the air? He didn't need anyone to believe it. He knew what he felt, and deep down that was enough. That morning, while fixing the flowers near one of the newer graves, he noticed an old woman walking slowly along the path. Her back was slightly bent, and she carried a basket of white lilies. Noah recognized her. She sometimes came to visit a grave near the oak tree. She was quiet and polite, always nodding and greeting, but rarely speaking. This time she stopped near him. "Good morning," she said softly. "Good morning," Noah replied, wiping his hands on his trousers. "You came early today," the woman nodded. "Yes, I try to come before the sun gets too warm. My knees don't like the heat anymore." She smiled faintly, then turned her eyes toward the grave under the oak tree. "I'm here to visit my daughter again." Noah froze for a second. He looked toward the grave, the same one the little boy used to sit beside. The headstone read Lena Moore. He felt his heart thump quietly. "I'm sorry for your loss," he said gently. "Thank you," the woman said, her voice trembling slightly. "It's been hard. She passed away 3 years ago along with her little boy." Noah's breath caught. Her boy?" The woman nodded sadly. "Yes, they were in a car accident. My grandson was only 6. For a long moment, Noah didn't move. He stared at the headstone, feeling a cold shiver run down his spine. He tried to speak, but his voice came out soft and uncertain. "Your grandson? What was he like?" The woman looked down, smiling faintly through her sadness. "He was such a kind child, always smiling, always talking to everyone. He loved to play with his toy cars. He used to say that his mommy was his best friend." She paused, holding back tears. "After they were gone, I kept his things in a small box. I couldn't throw them away. It still feels like part of him is here." Noah looked at the ground. His eyes went to the grave again, to the spot where he had seen that little boy sitting, humming and talking softly to his mother. The toy car had been real. The flowers, the small pebbles shaped into a heart. They had all been real. He wanted to say something, but his throat felt dry. The woman placed the lilies carefully on the grave and knelt down, touching the cold stone with her wrinkled hand. "I talk to them sometimes," she said. "It helps me feel close to them." Noah finally found his voice. "Do you ever feel like they talk back?" The old woman smiled sadly. Not really. But sometimes when the wind blows just right, I feel like she's near. It's silly, I know. No, Noah said softly. It's not silly at all. They stayed there in silence for a while. The wind moved gently through the trees, and a bird landed on the fence, chirping softly before flying away. The woman stood slowly, brushing off her knees. You keep this place so nice, she said kindly. I can tell you care. I do, Noah replied. It's peaceful here. Feels like more than just a job sometimes.